Now we're back with our panel. Let's switch to the Republicans. Robert, you spent a lot of time interviewing folks about the Bush campaign. He's making it official on Monday. What is the state of Bush world right now?
Bush world is trying to kickstart its campaign on Monday. Bush has been in this almost super PAC phase of his presidential process, raising a ton of money, and he's edged some rivals like Mitt Romney out of the race early. But they need to see some energy, and he wasn't out at the Romney retreat in Utah, and so a lot of the donors were pretty candid to reporters, and they want to see Jeb Bush, who's been in political winter for so long, who has a little rust on him, to shake it off and say that he can be the nominee, that he can have a vision for the party and be a general election contender.
Mark, there were reports of shakeups in the Bush campaign. Were those real? Where, you know, what foot is he on as he starts this new stage?
Yeah, Haley Barbour likes to say in politics, good gets better and bad gets worse. Jeb Bush is in a period now where bad is getting worse, and he's lucky that he's got this announcement if he executes it to try to turn things around. Right now, I think there's a pretty broad consensus in the party that his two main rivals are Marco Rubio and Scott Walker. Both the Rubio camp and the Walker camp like the hands they have. They are positioned now to be finalists in this. And you wouldn't have necessarily said that at the beginning of the year. When Jeb Bush signaled he was going to run, everybody agreed he will be a finalist in this. But he needs now to show, to use Hillary Clinton's words, that he will fight for this nomination. This is not going to be easy. We've not seen him fight. If he fights successfully, I still think he's the favorite.
I think, John, this is actually maybe one moment where your mom's adage may not be proved true. I think he does have a second chance to make a first impression for a few reasons. First of all, unlike the rest of us, real people, everyday voters out there have not been really paying attention. They are open, I think, to a number of candidates. Number two, really important, Jeb Bush is going to have, when you put all the pots of money together, $100 million. And that is a boatload of money. It's a bigger boat. I'm not making a Marco Rubio illusion here than anybody
else.
People
already.
Than anybody else has. Marco Rubio spent some money on a boat.
We're gonna stay on dry land here, Peggy, on the $100 million question. If that's the first thing people are hearing about Jeb Bush, is that wonderful for a campaign?
No, it's like, oh, his name is Bush. He's part of a dynasty. He bought up all the consultants and he gets the most money, and so he's going to win. I don't like that. I think at the end of the day, money can't buy you love. It's still true, I think, that Jeb Bush does not have a clear and obvious and hungry and naturally ardent part of the base. And he's got to get that. I think on Monday, there's two things he has to do. One is he has to stop this sort of slump-shouldered, shrugging, slightly defeated look, and sort of stand up and look like a leader and talk like a leader and make your vibrancy sort of infectious for people. The other thing is, I think he's got to get one or two issues the people identify with him that the base of the party likes, as opposed to the two issues they identify with him that they don't like, Common Core and I think immigration.
Scott Walker is seen as a fighter. People know that about him. They like it about him, that he's in the arena. Marco Rubio is seen as someone a lot of Republicans, grassroots and elites say, that'd be great to have as the face of our party. That's future-oriented. We'd like to go in. Jeb Bush needs something besides being a Bush, especially besides being Bush. This is why Jeb Bush is the right choice for the party in this time. Tomorrow he gets a chance to try to start making a case, but I agree with Ruth. He hasn't mismade the case. It's just it's all been inside. He's got to make him stand for something besides an exclamation point after his name and his logo.
The problem is he's been hobbled by immigration and education, his position on Common Core. And so I think Peggy's right. Persona matters as well. And I think personnel, the campaign usually shrugs off process talk, but Jeb Bush shifted Danny Diaz, this aggressive consultant, into the role of campaign manager. I think that's an acknowledgement that they need some kind of momentum as they restart this campaign.
Well, can Danny Diaz tell him, stand up straight, feel joy in this, go forward?
There's a really interesting contrast between Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton in terms of biography, because Hillary Clinton is using her family to, wrapping herself in her family to make her biography and show that she understands the issues of ordinary Americans. Jeb has the challenge of, you know, we see the new logo, Jeb, exclamation point, what last name, of figuring out ways to de-biographize himself, but yet come across as somebody that people, like, as I was saying before, want to live with. I do want to say something about the money. No, Jeb Bush should not be going out there and saying, I can buy this election, but it sure helps to have the fuel in the bank when you've got fuel in the gas tank. for this really long campaign
Particularly
ahead.
because all the campaigns now are talking not about Iowa and New Hampshire. They're not disregarding them. They're talking about March and maybe April. And if you're going to be a finalist in this, you've got to win some early states, but you also have the money and have to have the money in the bank and the ability to accumulate delegates into March. If Jeb Bush has that money and they don't waste it this year, he can be a finalist even if he stumbles early.
More to Ruth's point, which is there's a long time here. Maybe he can even make a third first impression.
Real quick, keep an eye on Ohio Governor John Kasich. I have never, you talk about wanting to run joyfully. I have never seen someone more comfortable out at that Romney retreat. He was mingling with the press for an hour and a half. This is someone who, if he runs, as we expect him to do so, is going to cut into Jeb from the center right, not from the hard right. That's going to present more of a threat.
And in New
Robert
Hampshire.
makes a point, though, about Kasich is a show candidate. He shows that he's joyous and buoyant. Jeb Bush says, "I want to be authentic and genuine." When you say you want to be authentic and genuine, aren't you in tricky territory?
Yeah, and when you have to put an exclamation point after your name and your logo to say this is exciting, that's not the best way to do it. Jeb Bush is underrated as a retail campaigner. I agree that Kasich right now is the guy who could, if he launches well, can raise enough money and introduce himself to the country. A lot of the people out in Utah don't know he was chairman of the Budget Committee, which is, for him, a big credential. He can make this a four-way race at the top tier with Walker and Rubio and Bush, but he's got to define himself too. The ironic thing is the two older guys who have been around a long time, Jeb Bush and Kasich, are ill-defined for voters. The two new guys, Rubio and Walker, have done a great job in the first half of this year defining themselves for Republicans.
He won re-election, John Kasich, in Ohio by 31 points. If I were him, that's where I'd start. And that important state, re-election, 31 points, that tells you something about understanding where the middle of America
and a quarter of the black vote.
Right
and
now.
expanded Medicaid under Obamacare.
Well,
how interesting is that?
That is interesting, but Robert, that's not going to win him a lot of fans in the Republican
No, I mean,
Party.
Kasich has a long, difficult path to the nomination, but his interest at this point is really a commentary on Jeb Bush. And you have Chris Christie waiting in the wings. He said to the donors in Utah he believes debates can relaunch his own chances for the presidency because his personality can perhaps overwhelm on that stage. So you have a lot of people throughout the party thinking the nomination is within reach, and that wasn't the case earlier this year when Jeb
And you
entered.
can't forget, under the top tier of the people we've talked about, and then Bob mentioned Christie, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Mike Huckabee, Rick Perry. There are a lot of other candidates in here. So when we're trying to game out how this is going to flow into the beginning of next year, you cannot discount the fact that with no front runner and vulnerabilities on the top tier, there's going to be a lot of people with a chance to impact who the nominee is.
A lot of chance to impact, and also we got to find, and we'll have to talk about this on another panel, but some kind of sorting technique to figure out how to get through all these names. Thanks all of you very much for a good discussion. We'll be right back with a look at some of this year's commencement speeches.